Before we begin this video, I would just like to say thank you all so much for all the love and support you've provided for me and the channel. I will make sure that this channel and its content moving forward will evolve even more than it has this year. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say here. But anyway, without any more delays, since I have put this video on hold for too long now, I hope you enjoy, and Merry Christmas fellow pretzels and any new viewers watching. Which, if you enjoy this video, I hope you consider subscribing. Thank you. Before this game came out, we learned that despite this game taking place in the past before modern day technology, the main character would have a phone with them at all times. That made me, and I assume many others, question how this would work. I personally think the idea of Arceus sending said phone back in time along with the protagonist and acting as the guide in this new world, or old world I guess, is a very clever idea. Cyndaquil finally has his flames back! Yes! This game officially confirmed what actually happens when Pokemon go inside a Pokeball, or how they even fit in said Pokeballs, which had been a question many fans had either wondered or theorized themselves for many years. That pop sound when you catch a Pokemon is one of the most satisfying things I've ever heard. Akari's facial expressions are just beyond funny. It's hard to say when about the events of this game take place. Is it 100 years? Is it 200 years? Is it 300 years? Possibly 1,000? But what I do find fascinating is the idea of ancestry characters. It seems really cool to me, seeing how far back the bloodlines of past Sinnoh Pokemon characters really goes. And this concept was not even limited to just Sinnoh Pokemon characters. Other regional characters are also represented in one form or another. Some notable examples being Betty being an ancestor to Wally from the Hoenn region, Garrick being an ancestor to Wulfric from Kalos, Liam being an ancestor to Clay from the Unova region, and Sanqua being an ancestor to Karen from Johto. Even if the Hisui region is the past of Sinnoh, it's great seeing other regions also being represented here too. I won't lie, this quarter, despite not being really big, looks really nice. I wouldn't mind living in something like this. How fitting that the first Pokemon we must catch in this game are the same Pokemon that we run into at the beginning of Diamond, Pearl and Platinum. And also BDSP. I kinda don't want to acknowledge that game, since Platinum is the definitive Sinnoh playthrough experience. Bidoof. Every Pokemon has a disposition, which is demonstrated here in the first mission. Bidoof being mellow and friendly, Starly being scared off when it notices the player approaching it, and Shinx being aggressive when it notices the player. This mechanic is present for every Pokemon in the game, so when you encounter a Pokemon for the first time, you'd have to think about how to approach them and figure out whether or not you want to battle them in order to catch them. Some Pokemon like Bidoof, Psyduck, or Ponyta do not react to the player's presence immediately, and won't attack or run away until either a Pokeball is thrown at them, or they get engaged in battle, giving you an idea of how they will react when they see the player as a threat. This evolution screen goes hard! Way harder than any Pokemon game prior. The rank up theme is the Diamond and Pearl intro. Even if giving up a Pokemon sounds like it sucks in theory, the way it is handled here works really well. Whether the people want to learn more about a specific Pokemon, or to help the people with their work in the village, and of course, bringing humans and Pokemon closer together, which is what the Galaxy team hopes to achieve. How fitting that Pikachu has his original cry in the past era of the Pokemon world. This conversation with Mai shows her strong bond with her Munchlax, which did not require her to capture it with a Pokeball. While the Galaxy team's intention with Pokeballs is to bring themselves closer to Pokemon, it is not a requirement in every circumstance. While it is unclear how Mai and Munchlax first met, it's interesting to imagine that they managed to form a close friendship for who knows how long. Day and night cycles have been a main staple in the Pokemon franchise for many years, but I honestly prefer how it was handled here. Since in previous games, the in-game clock matched whatever time it was set to on the console and would, of course, progress in real time too. Meaning if the game considered it night once it turned 8 PM, you'd probably miss something you were hoping to achieve, like a specific daytime only spawn or evolution. One day in Legends Arceus is approximately 24 minutes, equating to 1 minute per in-game hour. But just in case you don't feel like waiting around for a specific time of day, you can just go to the tent and rest until whatever time you want. It skips the trouble of having to wait around and fully heals your team. This day-night cycle just seems a lot more convenient to use compared to what we had before. I like how the battle theme for Wild Alpha Pokemon, while almost sounding the same as the normal Wild battle theme, sounds more intense than the standard battle theme. It's a subtle but clever way to show the player that Wild Alpha Pokemon are tougher to deal with than normal Pokemon. Weirder is a win because it was an upgrade to a Pokemon that desperately needed it. And I'm glad that Scarlet and Violet is doing this again, since Farigiraf, which is Girafare's new evolution, was teased a while back. We have seen evolutions to past Pokemon prior to Legends Arceus, mainly in Sword and Shield, but that mainly focused on new regional variants like Galarian Linoon or Corsola, rather than the regular forms we've known for much longer. Upgrades to past Pokemon like Electabuzz's or Magmar's evolutions, Electivire and Magmortar, we haven't seen anything like that happen since all the way back in Generation 4. So it's great to see this happen again after so long and giving it to Pokemon that really needed it. Despite Adamant and Arita, of course, being on quite bad terms with one another when seeing them interact for the first time in the story, I like their relationship knowing that they must work together to protect the Hisui region and eventually warming up to one another as the story progresses, eventually reaching a point where they can cooperate without conflict. I know I'm going to gush on about this topic again later, but something I love about this game so much is its OST being heavily based off of Diamond and Pearl's OST, with Heartwood being based off of Eternal Forest, which is one of my favourite area soundtracks in the entire Pokemon franchise. Hey yo, is that the intro sound to Diamond and Pearl? The noble Pokemon introductions are a cool way to show how intimidating and strong these Pokemon really are and their capabilities. Whether it's Kleavor chopping down a huge tree with no issue, Arcanine slowly approaching while walking on lava, or just Avalug's absurd size. Unlike past Pokemon games, you will always know when a shiny Pokemon is in the vicinity, because unlike past titles, you hear an audio cue indicating that one is nearby. While a shiny would constantly be sparkling if one appeared in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, there was never an audio cue letting you know. So it was possible that one spawned off screen and you never realized it, or in some cases, one would spawn immediately before you enter another room and it was gone. So the audio cue was a nice little, but convenient feature for many people who shiny hunted in this game, like myself. If you saw that the upgrade and the dubious disc were available in exchange for merit points before reaching this point in the game, you probably asked yourself, how does it make sense that the Porygon line is here in the past, despite being a Pokemon created in the modern era? Well, the answer is simple. Just like the player, they travelled back in time. And of course, since Porygon is a Pokemon created with modern day technology, it makes sense that their Pokédex entries in this game show that Professor Laventon has no idea how they work. The space-time distortions, while they could be slightly annoying to wait for, I still think it's a creative way to bring in Pokemon that you wouldn't expect to exist in such a time period. I know the game does not expect me to do this, but unintended shortcuts are just always fun to mess around with and will always be a win in my book. Gibble! Like I said at the beginning, it's not really clear how far back into the past this game actually is. But what I find interesting is how far back the message in the Solaceon Ruins dates. Like, it's a message that should be continued to be passed down to the people of Hisui/Sinnoh and future generations of people that come into the world. Really fitting that the unknown research notes hints are written in the unknown text. After catching a Pokemon for the first time, there is a chance you will see a horde of them in an outbreak. This doesn't apply to every species in the game, but for the ones it does apply to, it is a convenient way to grind research tasks for them, like catching and battling them, and of course, shiny hunting them. I like that the shiny Drifloon balloon in this Pokeball Throw minigame is worth more points than the regular Drifloon balloon. It's like, in a way, telling you that shiny Pokemon are something you must go for whenever they are in sight, and that you do not want to miss that opportunity to catch it. Since my Quilava here is evolving into Typhlosion, I think I will use this segment to discuss quickly what I think of the new Pokemon and the Hisuian forms introduced here. Typhlosion. I definitely prefer this over the Johtonian form. Some might disagree with me on that, but that's fine. I won't judge your opinions. Decidueye. Love the autumn colouring. Samurott. It's kinda like the regular one, but I prefer this colour scheme over the Unovan form. Weirder. As I said earlier, it was an upgrade Stanley deserved, but since I already gave it a win, let's move on to Cleavor. Had a lot of fun using this Pokemon on my first playthrough of the game. Ursaluna. Ursaring getting an evolution was a good choice, plus its shiny form thankfully doesn't carry over the nasty green colour Ursaring had. Quillfish. Fantastic shiny form. Overquill. Best Pokemon name ever. Basculin. Interesting idea to create a timid variant of Basculin, but I'm still neutral towards Basculin, so I'm just going to give 2 wins to its evolution Basculegion, because both of its gender variants look really cool. Sneasel. Really cute. Sneasler. Cool Pokemon and really cool battle stance. Braviary. Never got tired flying around with this thing. Lilligant. She's got the moves. Avalugg. Well, just like Basculin, I'm neutral towards this Pokemon too, but it was my favourite noble fight out of all of them. Zora. One of the most adorable Pokemon ever created. Zoroark. Fantastic. Growlithe. Also very cute. Arcanine. Really cool. Sliggoo and Goodra. They both hide in their shells like snails. That's just so cute. Voltorb. I mean, if you're going to make a regional variant of Voltorb, it only makes sense it matches the Pokeball design the game uses. And this also applies to Electrode. Enamorus. It's still kind of weird like the other 3 forces of nature, but honestly, this is a good weird to me, because this is definitely my favourite one out of all 4 of them. Dialga and Palkia's origin forms, we'll talk about those ones later. Anyway, that's the Pokemon section done. Let's continue. It's cool to see Jubilife Village being more developed as the game progresses. Another quality of life improvement this game has that no other Pokemon game had prior was the fact you could choose which Pokemon you wanted to catch first. This was honestly much better than before, because if you wanted to catch both Pokemon you had to battle against, you would be forced to beat one of them before you could catch the other, meaning you'd have to find the Pokemon you knocked out again. Glad I don't have to do that here. Paulina sounds like a great parent. Even if someone, like a child, or just anyone for that matter, eventually has to face tough tasks or big responsibilities in their future, it's good that Paulina isn't forcing her Growlithe into training and letting him live his life in the way he feels happy to live, until the day he is ready to become the next Lord. Good of you to call out the ridiculousness of their motto. Team Rocket's motto, that gets a pass because it's iconic at this point. At least they don't do that introduction every time, otherwise it would be a sin for another video. It felt good being able to traverse the water on Basculegion for the first time. I'm sure, just like me, the first time we went into the water before getting Basculegion, we thought we could swim. Well, we could, for only 3 seconds. So this was a joy to get for the first time. Even if it seems weird that we see a Growlithe evolve without the use of a Firestone, I can't say it wasn't deserving. I mean, despite having a 4 times weakness to water, it swam all the way to Firespit Island and confronted the Misfortune Sisters, and it somehow survived? I'm not going to question how, but that's a very impressive feat we've seen for a Growlithe. In order to find Manaphy and Phione when doing the Seas Legend mission, you need a Mantike, Weasel and Overquill in your team, and the time of day must be dusk. Which sounds like a very specific combination of Pokemon and a very specific time of day, but it's actually a reference to one of the books in Canalave Library which shares the same name as the mission. Nice little nod to the Sinnoh myths. I'm just glad they didn't reference that one folk story though. Just in case you want to see the starters you didn't pick, they are just here vibing in the lab. And also, these tiny drawings of Pokemon on the chalkboard are just adorable. I'll be honest and say I did not use the Battle Subway all that often in Black and White 1 and 2, so I never really saw Ingo and Emmett all that much. But I will say the inclusion of Ingo in this game was a welcome surprise. And I like his arc of recalling the Pokemon world he came from, being the present time period, where humans and Pokemon always work in battle alongside one another. Although, Ingo not being able to completely remember Emmett is pretty sad. There are 2 kinds of boss fights and or characters I'm satisfied with defeating or see fail. The first being tough boss fights, which Melly here clearly isn't. The other is winning against self-centered or highly egotistical characters, which Melly for sure is. Dude, no matter how many times you try to obstruct me, it's never gonna work, buddy. While you can use the Switch's capture feature to take photos anywhere in the game, I personally have the most fun taking pictures at the photo booth with all the options I am given. I mean, look at this masterpiece I made right here. Shh, do not disturb the sleepy Gibble. hidden moves? There are no such things in Hisui, surely. Reading that dialogue just makes me feel glad about the fact we pretty much moved on from forcing HMs onto our Pokemon at this point in the franchise. To that Wombi barrel that got me to the top of Mount Coronet in Platinum version, you served your duties well, but you are officially retired. Okay, Noble Electrode's introduction is without a doubt the best one out of all of them, no question about it. Also, the Voltorb self-destructing in this fight is, in my opinion, very creative. Ever since Voltorb was introduced back when the Pokemon franchise first began, it has always been known as the Pokemon that self-destructs no matter the circumstance. Really cool to see that utilized here too as some form of attack and or obstacle. One of the many reasons to always have an Abra by your side. Teleport supposed uninvited threats out of your homes or businesses. Although, how did that Wurmple get in the building? Did someone accidentally leave the door open and the Wurmple like a Beauregard crawl in? Did one escape from my pastures? What do you think? I don't know why I didn't mention this before, since it's present throughout the entire game, but you can always hear wild Pokemon cries no matter where you are. Serves kinda like a small teaser as to what you may possibly find nearby. I also already mentioned Garrick being an ancestor to Wolfric, but damn, this guy is built different. Sabi is a nice change of pace after dealing with the nonsense that was Melly. At least Sabi doesn't talk down on the player and tries to create some fun while leading the player in the right direction. She knows we need Braviary to reach the Eternal Ice and leads us to the top of the Snowpoint Temple, which is the perfect spot to glide down from with the help of Braviary. Sabi is cheerful, but also helpful in her own creative way. In past Pokemon titles, you needed Regirock, Regice, and Registeel all together to awaken Regigigas. Only real exceptions to this are Sword and Shield, where you also needed Regieleki and Regidrago alongside the other three, and also Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, since it was available as a Wormhole legendary Pokemon only in Ultra Moon, and you didn't need the other three Regis to catch him. Since Regirock, Regice, and Registeel are not available in this game, I guess you could say they are hinted here in a way in the Snowpoint Temple through the various statue puzzles you encounter, mainly through the rock, ice, and steel patterns you find on said statues. I won't lie, I'd also be shocked if I saw someone make a leap from that height, but at the same time, Garrick finally reached the summit of Avalug's legacy. He never gave up. He trained day in and day out, and at long last, he conquered the summit. I think we should give him a big hand for this incredible feat. I knew ahead of time that the noble Avalugg was like 100 feet tall, because, well, Volo said it. But even then, this entrance still gives me goosebumps to this day. I kinda wish I recorded my reaction to seeing this for the first time, but just for your amusement, I will try and recreate a somewhat accurate depiction of my reaction to sum up how it all played out. What the f***? Encouraging words from Professor Lavington. I can respect Kamado for holding on to his beliefs and ideals, even if his arguments here may be flawed. I also respect Adamant and Arita for acknowledging that Kamado's reasoning for kicking the player out is flawed and makes very little, if not no sense. Encouragement from a Shinx.
Oh my god! It's Cynthia, but a mommy!
Another reason to always have an Abra by your side. To help and support those you care for when they are in a very difficult spot. Thanks, Celine. The trials set by the late Guardians are all based off of what each Guardian represents. Mesprit's questions are all based off of how the player character felt during certain points of the story, such as the beginning, mingling with both clans, and of course, being kicked from the Galaxy team, as a way to show the main character's emotions to Mesprit. Yuxi fittingly tests the player's knowledge with this question. and the goal for Azov's trial is to try and hit Azov with one of the bombs provided without giving up, as a way to show Azov willpower and determination. And also, I like that, unlike in Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, where Cyrus captures the Light Guardians to create the Red Chain, we had to prove ourselves to them through their trials. Well then, that explains the recipe Akari made with Benny's instructions. Hands down, one of the most satisfying victories in the entire game. That's right, Kamado. Bow down to me, you fool. Palkia is communicating with a reader telepathically. The same is true if you chose Adamant to join you for the Lake Trials, where he will be told telepathically by Dialga about the upcoming battle before catching him. While the only difference when picking between Adamant and a reader is which legendary you capture first, it's actually very cool to see that the almighty Sinnohs they looked up to and worshipped alongside their respective clans actually communicated with their leaders. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, you both introduced Dialga and Palkia really well in your games, but this is how you introduce the gods of time and space properly in a Pokemon game. No matter how many times Melee acts like a total d*** to the MC or the other characters, it's just great seeing him get what he rightfully deserves not long after. Seriously dude, shut up and let us do what needs to be done. Okay, so we've seen the skull and armor fossils before in past Pokemon games, but something we never got to see until this game was fossilized variations of Rampardos and Bastiodon. If we were able to find fossils of evolved fossil Pokemon in future installments of the Pokemon franchise, do you think they should have different names to their pre-evolved forms fossils, or nada? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. We got to see how the Temple of Sinnoh became the Spear Pillar. The Temple of Sinnoh was given this new name later on in the story, but the fact we got to see how the Spear Pillar came to be in this game is definitely deserving of a win. So the origin forms of Dialga and Palkia at first did not appeal to me, as I thought they just looked ridiculous from a design perspective. But over time, I grew to like them because of the reasoning behind why these forms exist, which is of course their connection and similarities in terms of appearance to Arceus, the Pokemon who created both Dialga and Palkia. Also, origin Dialga and Palkia's battle theme. Just amazing. I know this is another soundtrack win in a row, but I just can't help it. The credit soundtrack is Route 209, one of the best route themes, or just one of the best soundtracks in general in the Pokemon franchise. So once you beat the main story, the starter Pokemon can now show up in the space-time distortions. But just in case you didn't feel like waiting somewhere between 5 to 40 minutes with the chance that a thunderstorm or blizzard will cause you to wait even longer, well, Laverton has got you covered, because the starters who were once vibing in his lab now get to vibe with you. So at this point, your mission is to find the legendary Pokemon at the respective locations Kogita's hints point you toward. If you knock out any of them in battle, don't worry, because you can try battling them again immediately. After all, you do need every Pokemon in order to beat the final main mission, except for the mythical Pokemon. Would it make sense to limit the player to just one chance for each legendary Pokemon in the game? Okay, I know Heatran already has a signature move, but come on, a Fire Barrier would be a perfect defensive move to add to his moveset. Or hers. Also, you throw Mud to put out Heatran's Fire Barrier, and Cresselia uses her psychic powers to confuse the player, which inverts the controls. I like that the challenge to catching these two legendaries takes advantage of both of their characteristics, which we do see again later with the forces of nature. Just like how we found out why the Temple of Sinnoh became known as the Spear Pillar, we also got to find out why Hisui also became known as the Sinnoh region in the present time period, because of the guidance of Almighty Sinnoh. Massive mass outbreaks are another great addition after beating the main story. Just like normal outbreaks, very convenient for completing research tasks and shiny hunting, but also very beneficial if you are still missing some entries for your Pokédex, like Weirdeer, Basculegion, and even the starters. Unlike normal mass outbreaks though, the shiny odds are not as good, but still decent. But what sets these outbreaks apart from the normal ones is you can visit multiple hordes of Pokemon instead of just one, which also, unlike the normal outbreaks, can also spawn that Pokemon's higher stages in their evolutionary lines, which can also come from a second wave, which is another feature which sets massive mass outbreaks apart from normal outbreaks. Second outwaves can also spawn a horde of Alpha Pokemon, or a combination of both Alphas and Evolved Pokemon. A second horde is guaranteed if a star is marked on one of the hordes. like Staravia in this example. If I clear out this outbreak, the second wave will be one of these three scenarios. A horde of Staraptor, a horde of Alpha Staravia, or a horde of Alpha Staraptor. Bottom line though, if you are still missing entries in your Pokédex, or you're trying to also work on an Alpha Dex, then massive mass outbreaks will be the most convenient way for you to pull it off. It's Cynthia's theme. Do I even need to say anything else here? Actually, I think this would be the perfect time for me to say that Volo is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best villain in the entirety of the mainline Pokemon series. Because, unlike the other villains who just wanted to harness the power of legendary Pokemon to try and pull off their plans, like Cyrus trying to force Dialga and Palkia's powers out of them via the Red Chain to create a new world, or Archie or Maxie trying to control Kyogre or Groudon to either increase landmass or ocean levels, Volo successfully managed to take control of Giratina, whom alongside Volo also wished to confront Arceus, who Giratina tried to bring out of hiding by opening the space-time rifts, causing Dialga and Palkia to go into a frenzy. It's not often we see Giratina as a villain in the Pokemon games, despite its Pokédex entries talking about how it was banished to the Distortion World for its violence. The fact the villain this time was actually able to control Giratina and almost succeed with his plan to create a new world using Arceus' powers. The Pokemon franchise needs more villain characters like this.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
This kind of stuff is why Giratina is my favorite legendary Pokemon. Also, best battle theme in the entire game right here. And for the first time in 15 years, the Azure Flute is finally in the hands of the players legitimately. This explains why Giratina chose to stop Cyrus in the future in the event's Platinum version, because of his new change of heart. I still think Giratina is an evil Pokemon for one reason though: jump scaring me at the age of 10! And also for the first time in 15 years, hearing the melody of the Azure Flute through legitimate means. Wait, is that actually the same pattern from the Sinnoh ruins in Heart Gold and Soul Silver? That was quite an obscure event for the 4th generation, but it is definitely a very cool and fitting throwback. Okay, so not only do I love the fact that the music becomes faster and more intense the closer you get to defeating Arceus, but one of my favourite aspects of this battle is when Arceus vanishes for a few seconds and the music comes to a stop, creating suspension. You have no idea where Arceus is going to try and strike, so you better look around quickly so you don't get caught off guard. And also, because no matter who you ask, because this will always be a win, Arceus in this game can change his type at will. And every single type of Judgment looks visually different depending on what type Arceus currently is when Judgment is used in battle. So I saw a YouTube comment which discusses this piece of Arceus we are given and theorizes that Arceus is just more than this creature we are bestowed. What I read from that comment was that this Arceus we were given may be one of the 1,000 arms which, as previous Pokédex entries has stated, that Arceus shaped the universe with its 1,000 arms, implying that Arceus is with us, but he is also everywhere else at the same time. If this one singular piece of Arceus is one of the strongest creatures in the world, who knows how powerful the entirety of Arceus could really be? Sucks I'm going to be ending this on a slightly sour note though, since at the time I am writing this, Scarlet and Violet are already out, and I have found out that Arceus won't be able to change his type at will via the Legend Plate in that game. But the good news is, his moveset got an insane buff in exchange. Arceus and his game to me will never die.